My parrot started saying things I didn't teach it. This whole thing started with my parrot, Mango. He's an African gray, the kind of bird that picks up words and phrases like a sponge. I've always loved how he mimics the sounds of my daily life, the ding of my stove, the creak of the front door, even the way I laugh. It's like having a sweet little echo of myself in the house. But over the past few weeks, Mango's started saying things that don't belong to me, things that don't belong to anyone I know. I've loved my house since the day I laid eyes on it. It was built during the days of American pioneers and is by far the oldest house in the little town I live in. It's really a work of art, creaky and falling apart as it is. But now I can't imagine spending one more night in that place. And it all started with Mango. He's been my companion for years, almost a decade now. I had him before I bought the house, and he's lasted longer than my first and only marriage, if that means anything. At first, the problem was subtle. I'd hear him mutter, "Long day," in a voice I'd never heard him use before. It was low, rough, gravely broken, fragmented, and slurred a little, like someone who smoked too much was drunk off their ass. I thought nothing of it, assuming that he picked it up from a TV show or podcast I left playing. After all, he's super smart. He can learn new words and phrases after hearing them only a few times. But then it got weirder. A few days later, I was in the kitchen washing dishes when Mango said, "Gotta be quiet now, Joey's home," in the same voice as before. I froze, my hands still in the soapy water. Joey is my name. I turned to look at him, but he just stared back with those beady black eyes, head cocked to the side like he was willing me to react. "What did you say, little buddy?" I asked, drying off my hands and getting closer to his cage. He cocked his head further, shuffling on his perch. It looked like he was about to say something, but he kept quiet. The next day I heard him say, "Almost time, almost time." It was the same voice, that low, gravely and completely unfamiliar drawl. This time, though, he continued to squawk, muttering phrases that seemed English in tune but lacked the coherence a sane mind draws between words, like he was regurgitating a list of syllables that a non-native speaker would think mimicked the bustle of conversation at a party. This time I went up to his cage and opened the door. "Mango, where are you hearing this?" He didn't answer, of course. He just clicked his beak and ruffled his feathers. Then later that night, Mango said something off-kilter again. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling on my phone, absently flicking a toy around to keep Mango entertained. Mango squawked a few times, trying to catch the toy with his beak. Then he said, "Ah, Joey's home." My blood turned to ice. The way he said it, so sure of himself, like it was directed at me, sent chills down my spine. I sat there staring at Mango, trying to make sense of what he'd just said. My mind raced through all the possible explanations, TV, radio, a neighbor's voice somehow carrying through an open window, but none of it added up. The voice was too distinct, too deliberate, and I'd never heard it before. I didn't sleep much that night. My heart skipped a beat with every creak of the house, every little sound that used to remind me of the beautifully historic place I lived in. I kept telling myself that it was nothing, that I was overreacting. I needed to sleep. I had work tomorrow. But deep down, I felt like something was wrong, dreadfully wrong. I slept for what might have been a few hours at most. Bright sunlight streamed through my sheer curtains, waking me up before my alarm. I made sure to play with Mango before leaving for work and tried to get him to say more in that voice. I tried imitating it because sometimes that prompts him to repeat similar things, but he wasn't very chatty. He usually isn't first thing in the morning. I decided I would get to the bottom of it, whatever it was, after I got home from work. That would put my mind at ease. It was a Friday, so at the very least I could stay up and annoy Mango until he said more in that voice. Maybe then I'd recognize it and figure out where he was hearing it from. When I got home, I went straight for his favorite treat, bananas. That usually turns him into a chatterbox. He's an absolute slut for the things, and will start begging for some the moment he catches a whiff. "Banana," he said. "Banana na 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 na. Banana please. Banana na banana. Squawk." I actually taught him to say squawk. I think it's hilarious. I laughed and fed him a morsel. "Good bird, Mango. Say, I love you." "Gimme kiss. Mwah," he said, imitating a bird he saw online. "No, say I love you." "I love you," he said. I rewarded him and he started hopping up and down on the table, talons clicking on the wooden surface. I continued getting him to repeat things, warming him up before trying to imitate that voice again. Then it happened. It only took one try. I drank some Coke and let it stick to the inside of my throat, then yelled for a few minutes, praying that my neighbors wouldn't hear, to strain my voice further. When my throat started to get sore, I did my best impersonation of the voice. It honestly wasn't even close, but it still worked for Mango. I rasped out of breath, "Joey's home. Almost time." Mango flapped his wings. "Joey's home, Joey's home," he said in the voice. I held up a sliver of banana. "Banana, banana, banana, please, please, I love you." "No, buddy. Talk about," I said, then dropped my voice back to the rasp. "Joey's home." He obliged. "He's home? Joey's home? Oh no, he's back early today. Back to the attic. The attic, the attic, the attic." Then he broke off into more of the broken half-syllable muttering, sounding like someone who belonged in a loony bin. I held out a big chunk of banana. "Good boy." "The attic? I haven't been up there in months, years maybe. It's just a dusty, half-finished room filled with holiday decorations and sad memorabilia from my failed marriage." "Good boy," he said. "Keep going, buddy," I affirmed, trying to coax him to say more. "Attic, Joey's home." "Back to the attic. Pronto. Joey's home early today, my little Joey, my boy." I looked at him for a while. He just shuffled back and forth, cocking his head in the way parrots do. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew I had to check the attic, that I had to see what was up there, just for my own peace of mind, or else I wouldn't be able to sleep that night. I gave him another big chunk of banana before setting him on my shoulder. I felt safer with his weight there, little claws digging into my skin through my shirt. I grabbed a flashlight and headed up to the attic. I pulled on the string hanging from the ceiling, and a ladder sprang down. Immediately, the must of dust, lumber, and insulation assaulted my nose. It wasn't altogether unpleasant. I took a deep breath, flicked on the flashlight, and began to climb. "Stay close, Mango," I murmured. "Stay close, Mango," he parroted. "I love you." "Love you too, bud." The beam of my flashlight cut through the murky air. Particles filtered down from the ceiling. It was surprisingly hot in the attic given the temperature outside. It wasn't really a huge space, and half of the attic doesn't even have flooring installed. It's just fluffy pink insulation and wooden beams. The part which had a floor, plywood laid over wooden beams covering the insulation between, was stacked almost to the A-frame ceiling with a disorderly array of boxes. Some of the boxes were plastic tubs, and when the flashlight hit them just right, they gave off a dull reflection. I fumbled for the light switch, flicking it a few times. The room stayed dark. "Fuck," I said. The bulb must have burnt out. I angled the flashlight down toward the plywood floors. The boxes kinda made a twisting hallway through the middle of the attic, ending with a small window facing the street. The blinds were shuttered, but a soft glow from street lamps managed to squeeze between the cracks. Something rustled from the other side of the attic. I took a sharp breath in, heart pounding. "Hello?" I asked, then waited for a beat. "Is someone there?" Silence. The only sound was of my thudding heart. "I love you," squawked Mango. I nearly leapt out of my skin. I shushed him, regretting the decision to bring him with me. I called out again. "Hello?" There wasn't a response. Slowly, ever so slowly, I inched my way down the cardboard hallway, sweeping my flashlight back and forth. I peered through slivers of darkness between the towers of boxes, sometimes catching a glimpse of the pink insulation behind them. I was almost to the window at the end of the hallway when I came to a wide gap between two stacks of boxes. I could clearly see where the dust had been disturbed recently, like someone was barely able to squeeze past and their belly ended up as a Swiffer. "Hello?" I floated again. I listened intently but didn't hear a thing. I felt my palm sweating against the cold metal of the flashlight. I was suddenly thankful that I had such a big flashlight, the kind night watchmen carry that double as a club in a pinch. I pushed between the gap and the boxes, barely able to squeeze through myself. What I saw next will stay burned in my memory forever. There was a small layer of plywood on the floor resting between the wall of boxes and the slanted part of my roof. On it was a pile of assorted food wrappers along with a makeshift bed. The blanket was in tatters, barely thicker than a bride's veil and torn in more places than it wasn't. Then I saw the pictures. They were taped to the back of the boxes, from floor to ceiling, and they were all pictures of me. Pictures of me playing with Mango, pictures of me in the shower, pictures of me eating dinner. Most of them were taken from above, from what I would later find to be small holes drilled in my ceiling. Some of them, though, the ones of me sleeping, they were taken from below, from in my house, standing beside my bed. There were close-ups of my face, eyes closed, sleeping peacefully. My stomach lurched. I was suddenly very aware of how sweaty my palm was against the flashlight, how slippery it was. I switched it to my other hand and dropped it in the process. It landed with a crack, plunging me into darkness. I swore and Mango squawked. I had almost forgotten about him on my shoulder. A pile of boxes crashed down from the other side of attic near the door. I jumped and almost careened backward off the plywood floor and into the open insulation wood beams. I fumbled back through the gap in the boxes, but I couldn't see shit. I could hear labored breathing and thudding footsteps moving away from me, toward the attic door. A silhouette was hunched over, outlined against the light streaming in the doorway, ladderway, from the house below. The person was huge, though I didn't catch a good look at them. A grunt followed by a slam, and the room grew even darker. Mango squawked and fluttered on my shoulder, his wings slapping the side of my face. All I could think about was the dim glow behind me, the faint glimmer of street lamps filtering through the blinds. I would be silhouetted. Whoever was in the attic with me be able to see me, but I wouldn't be able to see them. I swore and dropped to my knees, crawling back through the gap in the boxes to search for my flashlight. "Hello, Joey," the person said in that familiar, gravely voice. They were breathing heavily. I froze. I strained my eyes and ears trying to see the flashlight I had dropped without making a sound while simultaneously trying to echolocate the intruder. My hands were shaking. I was absolutely terrified. I groped blindly for the flashlight. I heard the person march deliberately, their labored breathing coming closer with each step. Mango was clinging to my shirt with his beak as well as his claws now, biting into my flesh. I think it hurt, but in that moment I couldn't feel a thing. I was numb with adrenaline. Finally, my fingers closed around the cold grip of my flashlight. I stood up with Mango clinched to my back now. "Come out, my little boy," the voice said. Oh, the voice was even worse in person. Mango did a damn good job with his impersonation, but his little beak could only do so much. The real voice had weight behind it. When Mango parroted, I thought it sounded like a smoker, but a smoker's lungs weren't healthy enough to talk with such weight. This voice filled the room deep and powerful. It boomed again. "Come out, my love. I want to see your pretty face." I shivered and clutched my flashlight. I smacked it against my palm, frantically clicking the on-off button, and it flickered on. The beam revealed a monstrous person. Long, patchy strands of hair clung to their peeling scalp. They were nearly naked. A huge belly protruded underneath a Hello Kitty t-shirt that did little to cover skin. It was the only article of clothing that she wore. The thing had breasts. I could only assume it was a woman. Her tits sagged over her protruding belly like cascading Yule logs, long and skinny, pulled tight into her childish t-shirt. Her legs were too thin to support such a build, and I thought she would topple over at any second. But they proved plenty strong as she marched toward me, one deliberate step at a time. She cocked her head like Mango so often does, and licked her lips with a dry smack. "Joey, my honey bear, you look dashing." Her voice maintained a deep croak, bubbling like a derelict engine. I stuttered, trying to find my voice. "Who are you?" She smiled. "I'm your new wife, much better than that whore, Lily, that you used to fuck." She said my ex-wife's name with such spite, such malice. I didn't know what to say, how to even respond. I think I shook my head, but honestly I can't remember much detail past that. It all happened so fast. She lunged toward me, closing the gap in seconds. I yelped, stumbling backwards, and crashed into the window behind me. Mango flew off my shoulder into the darkness, and I fell to the floor as she reached for me. Her hands were soft and oily against my face. Snakeskin, I thought as her weight landed on top of me. I screamed and thrashed. Her breath was hot and wet against my skin. She clawed, muttering nonsense as I tried to shove her off. My boy, she said. While we struggled, Mango flapped in circles above our bodies. He dived at her a few times as she held me down, pulling at my waistband. Give it to me. What the fuck? I shouted. She was too heavy, too strong. Where did that strength even come from? I thought as her spindly legs wrapped around me, keeping me pinned. Give it to me, she demanded, yanking at my pants and trying to lick my face all at once. I pushed with all my strength, shoving her face away from me with one arm while searching desperately for the flashlight with the other. When my fingers closed around the cool metal, I didn't hesitate for a second, slamming it into her back. She let out a huff of air into my face, a gagging stench, and rolled off me. I pushed to my feet, clutching the flashlight. Mango dived at her again and she snarled, swatting at him. I heard a thick slap as her hand collided with Mango, sending him hurtling through the darkness outside of my flashlight's beam. I lunged at her with both hands, not really thinking so much as reacting. I pushed, and she toppled through the wall of boxes behind her. She crashed through the insulation and drywall ceiling, supporting it into the house below. A plume of fiberglass enveloped me, and I heard her moaning through the opening in the attic's floor. I peered through the hole that she punctured. She was laying on the floor of my upstairs guest room, groaning loudly. I watched for a second, still unbelieving and out of breath, then sprinted for the other side of the attic where the ladder was. By the time I made it to the room, she was gone, leaving only a few drops of blood and fluffy insulation on the floor. I was pretty shaken up, but I still managed to call 911 and explain what just happened. A few minutes later, cops showed up with sirens blaring. I explained everything to them as well, and they took my statement. A few officers stayed with me in my living room while others conducted a manhunt outside, but they didn't find her. She escaped. Other officers conducted a search of my house, gathering evidence. I insisted to come with them in the attic to find Mango. The woman had swatted him, and I wanted to make sure he was okay. He wasn't. He was still breathing when I found him, laying atop some insulation, meek little breaths. Both of his wings were bent at odd angles, and he fluttered lightly. "Oh, Mango," I said, cradling him in my hands. He didn't respond. An officer offered to give me a ride to the vet's office. I held Mango the whole way, saying little prayers for his little body in the back of the police cruiser. I called ahead on the way there, and they had an emergency line with someone on call. They informed me that the vet could be there within an hour and gave me instructions on what to do with Mango in the meantime. He died before the vet showed up. His last breaths were shallow, barely a whisper. I sobbed and felt awkward in front of the cop, but they turned their attention elsewhere, as if to give me privacy. In the days that followed, I felt hollow inside. I left the house, leaving everything behind. I couldn't bear to be there. The cops told me they'd call if they found anything, but the days stretched into weeks, and their updates became less and less frequent. They never found her, never even got close. They assured me that she was probably long gone, miles away, that people like her drift from place to place. They said it to comfort me, but it only made things worse. She was obsessed with me, that much was clear. She knew where I slept, so I sold the house at a loss, barely able to stomach the thought of stepping inside again to pack my things. Even now, weeks later, I can still see her sagging body, her oily fingers, the way she licked her lips and called me her boy. I dream of her sometimes, nightmarish things. I wake up drenched in sweat, convinced she's in my new apartment's ceilings, the walls, and I can hear her labored breathing. Sometimes I hear the floor creak in the dead of night. Sometimes when the night is quietest, I swear I hear a voice, a rasping, low, fragmented whisper. Almost time, Joey, almost time.